Get ready to skyrocket your business and experience exponential growth. Welcome to Grow with Gary, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the ins and outs of business and entrepreneurship, bringing you compelling guest interviews with business experts, offering actionable insights and inspiring stories that humanize success. So grab your colleagues and get ready to unlock the secrets to success. Now, here's your host, business coach and owner of Micu Growth, Gary Micu Jr.
Hello and welcome to this very special first episode of Grow with Gary, Modern Life and Business. I'm your host, of course, Coach Gary, also known as my real name, Gary Micu Jr. And with us today, I'm very excited to introduce not our first guest, but our first guest host, my lovely wife, Mariella Micu. So Mariella, go ahead and take it away with a little introduction about yourself.
Hi, I'm Mariella Micu. I'm Gary's wife of almost 5 years. I'm a mom, and I'm a working mom, and I'm really excited to be your host today.
Awesome. Thank you. So Mariella is going to run us through. Normally, I'm going to be running the questions, but for this one, I really wanted to share my story and my experiences. And to do that, I felt who better to interview me than my wife. So we are going to run through the very same sequence of conversation that all of our guests will have. But of course, every conversation is going to be so unique, and I'm really excited to share that. I'm also a little bit nervous to share my story, if I'm being completely honest. It is easier being on the other side of the questions. So let's get started. And Mariella, do you want to take it off with maybe a first question for me?
Yeah, let's start with throwing it back to your younger days before we knew each other. Heck, maybe same time or about same age as our daughter. Can you tell me about your childhood and what sparked your interest in business?
Yeah, so I think, oh boy, sparked my interest in business. I think it was when we were traveling. We would always travel as a family. We'd often go visit my grandpa and my noni down in Florida, St. Pete Beach area, which now is a booming town. It's amazing how it's changed. But in those travels, we'd fly and we'd see different people in the airport. And if you remember back in, really before the mid 2000s, airport lounges weren't really a thing. They were very, very exclusive. You couldn't just get into them. It had to be earned with status. So I would notice that people would go into these areas. And I always kind of wondered, what is there? What's over there? And as coming to realize kind of what it was, and then I started to piece together a lot of those people they're business owners. They were entrepreneurs, and they were flying to meet clients and have meetings. But that then really kind of sparked my interest. I love travel, and I love exclusive experiences. I love small experiences that are very kind of intimate. Um, VIP, I guess, if you will. I like it. I love it. It's just something that really draws me in. And, I noticed that from an early age. And as soon as I realized that those were the sorts of people, I was like, well, what is this? Now I want to learn more about it. So I think that's probably the earliest thing that sparked my interest in business. Um, and then many, many things in between then and now, obviously. But yeah, I'd say that starts it.
That's such an interesting viewpoint to have, like to hear you say, because I've never heard you say it that way before. But so many people, at least in my experience and with me growing up, you see the business class, you don't think, what did they do to get there? You think, oh my God, I'm so jealous they get snacks. That's all you think about. So
Yeah.
it's cool that is what sparked your interest, with not how can I be that person? I'm jealous of that person, but how hard do I have to work to get to that point?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this was pre 9/11 days, so you used to be able to do a lot more cool stuff, especially when you were little. And I don't necessarily remember, but I've been told that when I was little, they would bring me up to first class and give me these huge strawberries, and the pilots would let me see everything. So I think that feeds into part of why I have such good experiences flying as well, and of course, flying for vacations is always an amazing experience. But that combines, I think, for that
So would you
whole thing.
say your experience traveling and seeing those people growing up
Mm-hmm.
was the pivotal moment that you knew that you wanted to get into business and
No.
entrepreneurship?
Mm-mm. No, I don't think so. I think that's the earliest, but certainly not the pivotal. I think the pivotal moment for getting into business in general was probably looking at college and trying to figure out what is it I'm going to study? What do I want to do? I looked at a few things. I looked at being an analyst, like an intelligence analyst. Think of your three-letter agencies. I thought that would be a really great thing. Um, and I was very much going down that track for a period of time. Um, in the honors college at Grand Valley,
Yeah, when
one of
we
my
met, you were going
professors,
down that track.
yeah, absolutely. So one of my
Yeah.
favorite professors was literally did that at a very, very high level, before teaching and still during teaching, and that was a big influence, and I'd always been drawn to that area. So I figured, maybe I'll do that. I'll do intelligence, be an analyst, maybe do a little bit of field work, but probably more on the analyst side. And then as I went through, I needed to pick a major, and one of the majors that I found that would fit that as well as give me other opportunities was accounting. And that's where I did study and got my bachelor's and my master's and my CPA license and went from there. And it took me a different route. Um, but the pivotal moment of knowing, I guess not the entrepreneurship side, didn't come till later. That wasn't until a couple years into my accounting career, actually.
Right. So, what were some of the most significant challenges of you getting into the entrepreneurship side?
Hmm.
Since, I mean, you didn't know that you wanted to do it right off the
Hmm.
bat anyway.
Yeah. So I think coming to the realization that maybe that is what I wanted, um, breaking away from what I had built previously. So, as background for that, I am a CPA in Michigan, and at the time I was working at what is now a top 50 accounting firm in the nation. Um, was doing very well, progressing at pace, above pace. Felt that I was in control of my career, felt confident in my knowledge. Great workplace environment as far as colleagues and everything goes, but the work itself, um, I enjoyed until work from home happened. And if everyone remembers, it was supposed to be we're going to be work from home for a month or two. And then it turned into something else. And if you're not remembering exactly, it's that illness that went around, and we won't say the word here so we don't get
That five-letter
stricken.
word.
Yeah, so we won't get stricken by any of the distribution channels. But you certainly remember that time, and it was supposed to be maybe a month, but unfortunately that was dead center of busy season. And
Yeah, you
being a
had a
tax
deadline
accountant,
coming up
hmm
right around the corner when the world shut down.
oh yes, yes, we had March 15th coming up for about half the returns, and then of course April 15th tax day that everybody knows. Um, Man, it really just changed things. And I realized that type of work, while I could do it in an environment where I had that close, tight-knit support, um, that working from home combined with some family matters, my mom has an illness that was progressing rather rapidly at that time, and we didn't know what that was going to look like. And that combination of factors led me to really take a look at what I do have control over in my life and what I wanted to have more control over. And I realized accounting wasn't going to fit that bill. So I started looking for other options, and I didn't have to look far. I just kind of looked across, looked across the house, and peeked over your shoulders, Mariella, and saw that maybe mortgages would be an opportunity.
Breaking into the entrepreneurship
Yeah,
world.
yeah. I mean, the first thing I had to do was, and I mean, at the time I wouldn't have phrased it this way, but now knowing what I know, I had to burn the ships. Um, the famous Cortez burned his ships and told his men, "You now have to succeed or die." And we talk about that in 10x and as a Grant Cardone coach, and we talk to our clients about sometimes you either need to be all in committed or you need to burn the ships and be all in committed to the new thing. Um, and that meant walking away from a career with a great salary, very clear progression, very clear responsibilities and roles, and pushing that all into a category of it's on me, it's new, uh, I don't know as much as I knew about accounting, certainly at that time. And oh, by the way, your credentials don't really mean a whole lot. Nobody cares about your CPA license in mortgage. There's a little bit of crossover, but it's very, very minimal. So it was getting over that fear of making the shift. And then what I think took longer to get over was not looking back and having any amount of regret or uncertainty of the decision of burning the ships, letting that piece go, and saying I have made this decision, and now I'm moving forward. Because there's certainly those moments where you're like, boy, it'd be nice to have that salary, and especially in the beginning there, that thought crossed my mind. But I would say that was the primary challenge then. That and balancing everything else that was going on in the world and my personal life, and just trying to keep it all together, like I think so many of us were.
It was such a crazy period of time
Yes,
in
it
our
was.
lives. Were there any key mentors that helped you develop into your love of business or
Yeah,
just in general
yeah.
as you started your journey?
I think mentors in general, particularly on like the leadership side, on the work ethic, being there and being committed and loyal to your family and your group, your company, your teammates, is definitely my dad. Um, Retired Master Gunnery Sergeant from the Marine Corps Reserves, retired as a captain from the fire department, um, and all through everything he had going on professionally, he always made sure that he was available for scout weekends and coached our teams, whether it's football or basketball or soccer or whichever. He was there for those things. And having 24, 48-hour schedules, that could often be a challenge. So it was, horse trading shifts and making things happen there. And that really showed me a lot there and led me then on a path of wanting to be a leader, to take those roles, to not shying away from taking charge, and looking for those opportunities. And that, from my younger age, has culminated in Eagle Scout. And since then, has just continued to take on, whether it's working with a client one-on-one or trying to be, an example and maybe a leader even for my colleagues, in coaching, whether they're, working directly with me or we're partnered in some way and fashion.
Is there like one key thing that stuck to you
Hmm.
from any of your mentors that helped you along the way? Like one key point.
Yeah, and another mentor I think I should mention, and at the time I didn't recognize it as mentoring. Now I do. Is Johnny Awesome, and I worked with him, and we're still great friends. And I think he's coming over in a couple Saturdays. We're gonna have game night. So that his opening my eyes to a broader breadth of possibilities really shook up my direction within the mortgage space, and in a way that I don't think he expected, certainly, when he was bringing these thoughts to my attention. But one of the things that really stood out to me, and in as much as I love Grant's content and there's so much good value in it, there's a book that I keep coming back to that's outside of it, and that is The Slight Edge, and it's about the incremental things that are easy to do, but just as easy not to do, right? Like it's easy to train for 20 minutes every day, but it's just as easy to miss that day. And
Definitely.
those are the massive consistencies that compound into our efforts. So I keep coming back to that, and I don't think Johnny, maybe he saw it, but I didn't see that at that time. But I certainly do now.
Can you tell me about a particularly risky
Mm,
decision you made
hmm
when starting your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting it was a huge risk, and we
I would
we
say so.
covered that. I mean, leaving a steady career to go into mortgages, and then realizing that wasn't really the right fit. There was something more, and then finding 10x and Cardone training and getting into that. That led to the opportunity then of starting Micu Growth as a 10x business coach and Grant Cardone licensee. Um, that that initial risk, certainly so. Purchasing the license, um, boy, that was that was a tough sell on Mariella for you. I mean, that was a tough sell. We had to work it. Um, I had to sell myself that I had the confidence to deliver on this commitment and making a substantial investment into this new business that was an idea at that stage. Um, and then I had to sell you on that.
Oh yeah.
And then we had to, pony it up, right? And write that check. And I'm so glad we did. So I think that was a huge risk, but I don't want it to all be the starting, because I think oftentimes there's risks we take after we've started that maybe we don't recognize as much. And it's something I recently had an opportunity to speak with some of our other 10X business coaches and some of what are called the elite coaches, which is a subset of the 10X coaches who directly coach Grant Cardone's clients. And I'm very proud to be part of that. And then there's a developmental group of some amazingly talented coaches who are working towards that elite group. So I had an opportunity to speak to them for about 20 minutes about stretch clients. And then again with the elite coaches as well. And a stretch client is someone who is going to take you outside your comfort zone. You may not have every skill that you think you need to service that client fully. You may not have every bit of confidence. You may not have the perceived altitude. But in those ways, it stretches you. It physically pulls you outside your comfort zone and forces you to grow so that you learn as much from that client maybe as they learn from you. And I think for me, I had one of those clients. And he runs a multiple tens of $1 million logistics space company, and unique challenges, very unique from what maybe my kind of traditional client of a realtor or a mortgage broker, whether they're an individual or they run an office, shifting to a different niche, different industry altogether, different size of team, very unique. But saying yes to that, because my initial gut reaction at that time was, this business is still new. What if I can't do it, right? And that doubt set in, and the fear really is what I would describe it as. And I turned to Mariella and I said, so I got this opportunity. I laid it out to you, and then you immediately were like, so what are you asking me for? Just say yes. Like, you've got this. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So
And you didn't even need the push. I think you were just like,
no, I was getting there,
you were getting there.
but the push helped. The push
The whole
definitely helped.
conversation was only like 10 seconds before you took
Yeah,
the
no,
lead.
it wasn't long. It was not long until I said yes. Um, but that was a huge opportunity, and still to this day, it continues to be a very fruitful relationship. And I learn as well as, of course, my mentee learns. So that I think was a huge risk of taking that challenge, and the doors it's opened to me now is massive. Going from not being sure, right, that I knew I fit in the program, particularly on the Grant Cardone Elite side, which is a subset of my business. But not just fitting, but could I be a top performer within the group? And that's something I always want to do. I don't want to just be in the group. I want to lead. I want to be outstanding in as many ways as possible. And through that stretch client now, in November of 23, I was the number 3 coach. And then now in December of 23, I was the number 1 coach for the elite group there for the month of December. So because I took that fear out of it, and instead of drawing away, pushed into it, something that Grant teaches us to do is fear doesn't tell you what not to do. It tells you what instead you should do. And if you're not feeling that fear, you're not doing something big enough.
So would you say that that's how you're approaching your decision making in your business, is
Yeah.
taking out the fear?
Yes, with a healthy respect for reality, right? And it's not, I'm afraid of the saber-toothed tiger. Well, yes, you should be. That is the different situation. It is, I feel fear because I don't want to take this opportunity, right? And it's not that I don't want to take the opportunity. It's that the fear is telling us there's a disconnect between our evolutionary emotions and feelings and what's our reality in today's world. There's no harm that could come from taking that client other than potentially fail and learn through that failure. And certainly I've made failures along the way, but I learned from those. But it's absolutely worked out and continues.
This is Coach Gary. Wanted to take a moment, got to pay some bills here. I wanted to talk to you guys about something that's extremely important to me and honestly is one of the primary reasons I've had the success so far last year and this year that I have, and that is 10X Health. So before we show you a little information about 10X Health, I wanted to say my energy is up, my clarity is up. I'm down 37 pounds. I've got the go-ahead, that vigor to play with my little girl, to enjoy time with my wife, and I keep looking forward to continuing to improve, and that is in large part thanks to 10X Health. So if you've been feeling that your energy is low, if you don't have that drive, that motivation that you feel that you really should, especially for the guys out there, it's not all about stuff in the bedroom. There's other things that can be fixed, that can be going on. So if you're looking for that, if you feel those things, it's time. 10X Health is your ticket.
Definitely. How do you stay adaptable and flexible with change in the nonstop?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
nonstop.
Well, part of it is you don't get a choice. You either are flexible and adaptable and you suck it up and figure it out, or you slip. And if you think you're staying still, you're going backwards because everybody else is still moving forward. The world is moving forward. So whether it is adjusting to things that a client needs, changes to program offerings, right? Changes to business structures, careers, changes in our relationship. Our relationship has grown in ways that I don't think we expected. Family certainly changes. People get older, people get sick, people are healthy, people get married. All of that comes through, and it's you have to learn to just roll with it. And for myself, it's very, very challenging. It's taken me a while to get to that point. Um, Tend to be a perfectionist, tend to be a planner, very, very analytical. And like all people, change is difficult, but when you combine those factors, it's very, very hard. And I think one of the things that really taught me to be more adaptable is my daughter, Nicolina. And someday she'll watch this when she's older. She's gonna be like, "Dad, you're embarrassing." But right now she's 21 months, and I don't care. So sorry, Nicolina, but it is what it is. Her being born, uh, you know, being a dad, being a husband and a father, then um, really changed things. And then especially, we went through some challenges with her, and not something I can really share the whole story um, at this time, but something maybe in the future we'll revisit. But we face some real challenges, and we still do. So even this year, things are ongoing, um, and working through some of that while and balance isn't the right word. It's maintaining because there is no balance. You're either in with something or you're off with it. Um, but when we look at in another Gary Ryan, who you viewers and listeners will have an opportunity to meet in a future episode from my accountability group, another 10X business coach from Australia of all places. I think he really sums it up quite well of balance isn't looking at the here and now, it's looking over a distance of time. Maybe not even years, but even decades. And through that you see then, did you achieve what you wanted? And if you have, then that is your balance. But in the moment, there is no balance. And that was very, very difficult for me to come to terms with. But I think that's how I stay adaptable is realizing that there's not an option, right? It's failure's not an option on that one. And then working hard at it every single day. And just like you would train for your role, train at being adaptable. And it's a tough one, but we do it.
Can you give me an instance where you had to adapt and innovate and pivot?
I think, especially with my daughter, that's probably a huge adaptation. Going from, it's things are about me. Sure, things are about us, right? As a new couple, but things are still a lot about you. And then there's us. But once she entered the mix, it really became us. Um, Even to the point where, do I travel for a conference? Do I travel to go be certified as a 10X certified coach? Right? Becomes a question versus, I mean, prior to her, I would have been like, all right, see you, Mariella. I'm going to Miami for 2 days and I'm coming back certified. Like, see ya. You can come with, I guess, but like, I'm going to Miami. So, you know, let's figure it out. And then with Nicolina, it's like, oh man, I'm going to miss her for, 2 days. And then it's really like 3 with travel there
Want
and
to come
back.
along
Yeah.
every time?
Yeah. It's like, come, please. I beg them to come along and it's not always feasible. And, I think specifically with the certification that on the return trip um, required a lot of adaptability. Taking a highlight like being 10X certified and having that, and then rolling right into just an awful event. Yeah, absolutely terrible, and that required a lot of adaptability and having the support network, family, friends, colleagues, um, to get through that and move on and find new ways of doing things. Um, you know, can't always count on childcare or arrangements or things come up, right? And even if nothing crazy happens, things come up. Your babysitter may cancel. So you've got to stay adaptable. I think that really taught me that. And I did not expect to learn that lesson. Certainly not that day.
So, speaking of family, how do
Yes,
you maintain your work-life balance?
I don't. I already said that. There's no such thing. Um, I'm very intentional with my time, right? So when I'm with my daughter, I'm with my daughter. Um, Occasionally, I have a meeting or something that will overlap of when I'm trying to spend time with her or taking care of her. And in those moments, it is a sacrifice. It means turning on Bluey for an hour to be in a meeting with my fellow coaches. But I know that my presence there is important, and she's happy as could be watching her show. She Why she calls TV TT, I don't know. Again, sorry, Nicolina, embarrassing you here. But she calls it TT or she calls it show or movie, and she knows Bluey by name. And we're very conscious of what she consumes, but Bluey is on that short list of approvals. So I if she watches an
Hey.
hour, it is what it is. She's content, she's happy, she's safe and healthy and having a good time, and I'm able to then contribute where I'm most needed in that moment. But outside of that, it's still then the rest of that time then being fully with her, not being on my phone the whole time, and really trying to minimize as much as possible, making sure that we go sledding. Um, Bought her first sled and took her sledding and went down the hill and sent videos out to everybody in the family. But outside us taking that video, and she loves watching it back, um, the phone wasn't out. That was just me and her, and I think that is an example of that balance. And the same goes with yourself, Mariella, is finding those times where, like, okay, it's okay to just unplug, and oftentimes that means it's early morning or late in the evening, because the rest of the time it's on with something. whether it's work or family or those two competing, which certainly can happen. But it's the intentionality. I think that is the only way to secure that. I will not sacrifice Nicolina or your time with me, and nor mine with you. But also, it is knowing that there are sacrifices to be made in moments, but in the grand scheme, we're keeping it together.
Is there a personal habit that or mindset that
Mhm.
you've kept that has kept you along this whole journey that's
Yeah,
always just been in the back of your head
yeah.
or something that you do?
I've always had. So I'm a big history nerd. So that it doesn't come through as much as it used to, but I'm a huge history nerd.
Big history
Yes,
nerd.
it's bad sometimes. So we went to Gettysburg, and I think my dad and I read just about every sign in the
Don't
park.
ever take him to a museum.
Yeah, yeah.
You'll be
So
there for years.
um, yes, and so one of the things that kind of strikes me, and particularly American history, is manifest destiny, and you've probably heard that term. It's the westward expansion, west of the original boundary, which was the Appalachians, and it was never a question that it was rightfully America's, and that led to many historical events to occur, good, bad, and otherwise. But the sheer determination and certainty that there was a greater goal, there was a greater purpose, there was something to be achieved, that really resonated with me. Um, and I've always felt some sort of manifest destiny, that there is some greater purpose for me. Um, I'm a Catholic, so I believe that it's from God. You may believe similar, you may believe otherwise, but that manifest destiny, I think, really kind of sums it up then. Um, and for a minute, I lost that, and it really shook me to my core. It was a very, very challenging time. But then in refinding it, rekindling it, now it burns brighter than ever, and I know that it's helping other people, and it's doing it in the way that I am now in coaching. That is a part of it, certainly, and I think a very large part of it. That and being my family, right? Mariella and Nicolina, and hopefully future kids, to come, and they're the other huge part of it. So yeah, I think that clarity of purpose, of vision, will pull you through just about anything. And there's many stories of that, both historical as well as modern day. All you have to do is ask someone who's gone through something truly challenging, um, and they will tell you that there's a purpose or a vision or a mission that kept them going through those times.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So Gary, tell me, what legacy do you want to leave behind through your business?
Yeah. I think in particular through the business, the legacy I want to leave is of helping people, of helping small business owners to achieve success in all areas of their life. And in fact, that shows up in my mission and vision statements, right? And that then means not just winning in business, not just winning financially, but maintaining a healthy family. And I think that is a legacy very worthwhile pursuing. And I think I want that first for myself, proof of concept, proof of model, and it's not a new thing, um, but it's always a new world. So how do we create that now in today's age, in 2024? How do you have a family and a successful business and not fall victim, if you will, to all the craziness of the world? And it's always been crazy. It's one of the things I loved about studying history is you see that come through. So I think that's the main thread of the legacy is helping myself, of course, selfishly, but others to achieve the success in all areas of their life. And then through that, there's many other subcategories of that. Of course, business coaching, helping them win in business is my business. So certainly that's a huge part of it. Um, but I think there's some very interesting relationship um, material and courses and things like that that are starting to shine a light, and something Mariella and I are doing right now. We're in the middle of Elena Cardone's Empire Builder course, and I so far it's been fantastic. It's open dialogue between us, um, and I think that's such an interesting component to bring in. So I think I see that as part of the legacy too, is helping. Again, that's another piece of winning. So primarily business, but then also really in all areas. The last thing I want is you to be rich and lonely. It's not what I want for me, and I don't want that for anyone around me either.
For sure. So how would you measure success beyond the financial
Yeah.
when so many people focus on just the financial
Mhm.
aspect?
It is, it's how does my daughter turn out, right? Is she a good kid? Right now she's 21 months. Of course she's a good kid, right? And I think she's special. She is special. But every kid at that age is still innocent, and it's how do they turn out later? I think that's the real measure, um, for fatherhood, and certainly I think in motherhood, as far as were you able to raise a contributing, self-thinking, strong member of the world here. And then in relationships, it's you know does your marriage, and it's not that hard to beat the average, but it's the average for a reason. Does it outlast? Does it actually hold together? And so many just don't nowadays. Um, that I think is a very important measure. And and then success in other ways, right? Did you do the things you've said you wanted to do, right? And not the bucket list. Oh, I want to go to this one restaurant. No, not that. It's the I want to travel, right? I want to see the world. I want to experience things. I want to give back to my community, right? Those sorts of things. Did you actually do them, or was there always an excuse? Was there always a reason? Was there always something that got in the way? I think it's achieving those things, those big, massive goals that aren't done in one. And it's not the one trip; it's the trips. It's the sequence of travel. At least for me, I love travel, so that's a piece of that. Um, and then in business, it is easier to measure, right? How many clients do you have? Well, we can rattle off a number. How much revenue do you have? You should know that number, right? Um, how much are your clients winning? We should measure those things. But some of the others are more difficult to measure. And I think that's part of why financial gets focused on is I can look at a bank account and see how many zeros are behind the number. Well, great. Well, we can measure success by those number of zeros. We see things that are tangible. What car do you drive? What clothes do you wear? Things like that. They're
I think
very
that's what a
easy.
bucket list is to a lot of people too, though,
Mm,
is something that they can check off.
it is, but it's knowing how are we going to know that we checked it? And I think that's harder in a marriage. It's harder with kids.
Fair.
Um, and even in this, I've explained my thought on it, but I haven't gone to that detail of, am I checking this box, right? So a better example as I say this, right, to be more clear, like better example of Nicolina is, does she pick quality men and she's never allowed to date, but when she does break that rule and start to date, does she pick quality men to be around? Um, that I think is so crucial. And yes, it's her decision, but who influenced her? Because if I influenced her improperly, then that's my failure as a parent. But if I let someone else influence her, then that's my failure as a parent, right? When she's at that age where I can protect her and hold her close. So, and it sets her up then for success. So, does she pick people of good character, whether they be friends, whether they be dates, whichever. And I think then too, in marriage, another more firm thing that we can measure and look at is when the kids are out of the house, do you still know each other? And that's a piece of marital advice that obviously we're nowhere near, but I've heard time and time again is you do not want to be in the position where the kids are out of the house and you look across the room at your partner and say, "Who are you?" Because everything was about the kids. Um, that is a measure of success, I think, certainly in our marriage.
Well, Gary, it's been a pleasure
As
being your
always.
host for the day. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank
As
you.
our first guest on Grow with Gary.
My cheerleader, my champion. Thank you. And thank you for coming on, taking this on. I know it's outside your comfort zone. It was a stretch.
It was definitely a stretch for me.
We made you work for it. So with that, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, like, subscribe, share, invite your friends, tell all about it. And of course, we've got more great episodes to watch. So please go right on ahead and dig in.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Grow with Gary. You're officially one step closer to crushing your business goals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Connect with Gary by reaching out on social media at Micu Growth or online at micugrowth.com/podcast. And be sure to include a comment with your top takeaway. Until next time, this has been Grow with Gary.